Welcome to Spookin' Softly, where darkness breathes and shadows whisper. I'm your host, and tonight we venture somewhere you may not return from unchanged. Find a quiet place, turn down the lights, and let the story find you. Tonight's episode, The Woods. The silence was the first thing that truly settled into your bones out here. Not the gentle hum of nature you hear in a manicured park, but a deep, resonant hush that swallowed all other sound. It was the kind of quiet that pressed against your ears, making them strain for something, anything to break it. We were deep in the Huron-Manistee National Forest, the Upper Peninsula of Michigan stretching out around us in an endless tapestry of ancient pines and looming birches. Our group was large, 12 of us, a mix of old friends and new faces, all drawn by the promise of untouched wilderness and the challenge of a week-long off-grid camping trip. Mark, my partner, had been the most enthusiastic. He loved the idea of escaping the digital world, of relying on our own strength and ingenuity. I, Sarah, was more hesitant. I appreciated nature, certainly, but this place, it felt different, impenetrable. We'd hiked for hours, leaving the faint ATV trail far behind, pushing deeper into the forest until even the sun struggled to pierce the dense canopy above. The air, even in late August, held a crisp, almost metallic chill, carrying the faint scent of pine needles and damp earth. David, our unofficial guide, and the most experienced outdoorsman among us, chose our campsite. It was a small, natural clearing beside a shallow, meandering creek, framed by towering white pines that scraped the sky. Their bark, stripped by time and weather, gleamed like bone.
Perfect.
David said, his voice unusually low, almost a whisper, as if he too felt the weight of the silence. He dropped his pack with a thud, the sound startling in its abruptness. Setting up camp was a flurry of activity, a welcome distraction from the unsettling quiet. Tents sprung up like mushrooms. A fire pit was dug, and the scent of roasting hot dogs soon mingled with the forest's natural perfume. Laughter, boisterous and a little forced at first, began to echo among the trees. We were pushing back against the silence, staking our claim. For a while, it worked. The crackle of the fire, the easy banter, the feeling of shared purpose. It created a comforting bubble against the vastness outside. As dusk painted the sky in shades of bruised purple and deep indigo, the forest around us seemed to deepen, to draw in closer. Shadows stretched long and grotesque, turning familiar shapes into monstrous figures. The trees, so majestic in the daylight, now seemed to lean in, their branches like skeletal fingers. "Anyone else feel like we're being watched?" Emily asked, her voice light, but with an edge of unease. She was huddled closer to the fire, nursing a mug of tea. Mark chuckled, putting an arm around my shoulders.
It's just the woods, Em. They're always watching.
He tried to sound reassuring, but I felt the tension in his arm. I nodded, though a shiver traced its way down my spine. It was more than just the woods. There was a presence, a subtle shift in the air, a sense of eyes, cold and patient, sifting through the layers of our campfire camaraderie. My gaze drifted past the ring of light, into the impenetrable darkness beyond. The silence returned, more profound now, broken only by the rhythmic chirping of crickets. Or were they crickets? The sound felt wrong, too regular, too close. The first night was punctuated by sounds I couldn't quite identify. The wind, perhaps, whistling through the high branches, but it sometimes sounded like a whisper, too low to discern words, too persistent to ignore. And then there were the footfalls, light, almost imperceptible, just beyond the perimeter of our camp. I'd wake, heart hammering, listening. but the sounds would always cease the moment I became fully aware. Mark slept soundly beside me, oblivious, or perhaps just better at ignoring it. In the morning, a small, nagging detail emerged. David, usually meticulous, couldn't find his compass.
Swore I put it right here.
He mumbled, rummaging through his pack again, his brow furrowed.
Ah, well, must have packed it deeper than I thought.
He waved it off, but I saw the quick glance he gave to the surrounding trees. A seed of doubt planted. The second day, we explored. We hiked a narrow deer trail, the ground soft with pine needles, leading deeper into the forest. The trees here were particularly ancient, their trunks thick with moss and scarred by forgotten lightning strikes. The air grew colder, the light dimmer. We barely spoke, the grandeur of the wilderness demanding a certain reverence. Later that afternoon, a few of us decided to gather firewood. As I bent to pick up a fallen branch, I caught a faint scent. It was musky, earthy, but with an underlying sweetness, sickly and cloying, like something long dead and then left to rot in the sun. "Do you smell that?" I asked, turning to Emily. "Smell what?" she replied, wrinkling her nose, then shrugging. "Just the usual forest smell, I guess. Damp leaves." She didn't seem to notice it. Or couldn't. I pushed it aside. My imagination, perhaps, overactive from the unsettling quiet. Yet, as the day wore on, the scent seemed to cling to the periphery of my senses. A phantom odor that came and went, always just out of reach. That night, the camp settled into a nervous energy. The laughter was less frequent, the conversations more hushed. David had found his compass, not in his pack, but lying neatly on a log by the fire pit, a log he was sure he had cleared just that morning. He didn't mention it, but I saw him check his pack zipper twice before he settled down. Later, around the dying embers, Mark tried to lighten the mood.
Remember that time we thought we saw a bear cub, and it turned out to be a really hairy stump?
He said, nudging my foot. A few forced chuckles. David cleared his throat.
You know, this area has a lot of old legends.
He began, his voice gravelly.
The Ojibwe, they have stories about things that live in these woods, things that are hungry.
A sudden hush fell over the group, thicker than any silence we'd experienced before. The fire popped, sending sparks spiraling into the inky blackness. Emily shivered. "What kind of things?"
They say, there's a spirit here, a creature of immense hunger, born of starvation and the forbidden act of cannibalism.
David's gaze swept across the ring of anxious faces.
They call it the Wendigo. A gaunt, skeletal thing, eternally starving, always searching for flesh.
A collective intake of breath. The words hung in the air, heavy and cold.
Sounds like a campfire story to me.
One of the newer campers, Tom, scoffed, but his eyes darted into the darkness. David's expression remained grim.
They say it can mimic voices, lure you deeper into the woods just by calling your name.
He paused, letting the words sink in.
And once it touches you, once it marks you, you become one of them.
Sleep was impossible after that. Every rustle of leaves, every distant hoot of an owl, every creak of a tree branch was magnified, transformed into something sinister. The whispers returned, louder now, almost conversational, just beyond the reach of comprehension. Was it the wind? Or was it something else? Something learning our language, testing its mimicry. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing the sun to rise. The third day brought a chilling discovery. Our food supply? We'd stored it meticulously, hung from a bear bag suspended high between two trees, far from the ground. But that morning, when we went to retrieve it, the rope was frayed, almost severed, and the bag itself had several deep, jagged tears. Not ripped by a bear, which would have clawed and torn with brute force, but carefully, precisely, as if by something with long, sharp fingers. And a significant portion of our dried meat was gone. Mark stared at the damage, his face pale.
What? What could have done this?
David examined the rope, then the tears in the bag. His jaw was tight.
Not an animal I know of.
His eyes, usually so keen and confident, held a flicker of genuine fear. The group was visibly shaken. Accusations started flying, hushed at first, then more direct. Who would do such a thing? Was it a prank gone wrong? Was someone trying to scare us? But the evidence didn't fit a human perpetrator. The precision of the damage, the lack of other disturbance. The hunger became a real concern. We had rationed carefully, but now a significant portion was gone. We would have to cut our trip short, perhaps by 2 days. The decision was made. We'd leave tomorrow morning. A sense of relief, but also a new kind of dread settled over us. Would it let us leave? That night, the temperature dropped significantly. A biting wind howled through the trees, carrying with it a distinct, unsettling odor. The same sickly sweet smell I'd caught before, but stronger now, undeniable. It permeated the camp, making my stomach churn.
It smells like decaying meat.
Tom whispered, his face green in the firelight. The sounds were no longer subtle. There were definite footsteps outside the ring of firelight. Not deer, not bears. These were bipedal and heavy, yet impossibly light at the same time, like something enormous yet ethereal. A shuffling, dragging sound that made my skin crawl. Then the whispers grew bolder. They weren't just random sounds anymore. I heard my name. Sarah, a drawn-out, wavering whisper, as if spoken by a voice that hadn't used vocal cords in a very long time. It came from the darkness, just beyond the edge of visibility. My blood ran cold.
Did you hear that?
Mark asked, his hand gripping mine hard. Emily, huddled on the other side of the fire, whimpered. It sounded like you, Sarah. We spent the night huddled together, refusing to sleep. Every shadow became a threat, every gust of wind a potential attack. David sat closest to the darkness, an axe clutched in his hand, his eyes scanning the impenetrable black. He was no longer the confident wilderness expert. He was a man staring into an abyss. When morning finally broke, a thin, milky fog clung to the ground, shrouding the trees in an ethereal mist. It was cold, damp, and eerily quiet. Too quiet. Even the usual morning chorus of birds was absent. The world felt muffled, dreamlike, horrifying.
All right.
David said, his voice raspy from lack of sleep.
Everyone pack up. We move out now.
As we started to dismantle the camp, a new horror unfolded. One of our group, a quiet young man named Ben, was gone. His tent was empty, his sleeping bag neatly rolled. His pack remained. Panic erupted. "Ben!" Emily cried out, her voice cracking. "Ben, where are you?" We searched, calling his name, our voices swallowed by the thick fog. The visibility was terrible, perhaps 20 feet at best. The trees, previously just tall and majestic, now felt like prison bars, pressing in, obscuring. David organized us. His usual leadership returned, but with a frantic edge.
Spread out, but stay within earshot. Don't go too deep.
We fanned out, calling, listening. My heart pounded a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Each step I took felt like wading through thick treacle. The fog swirled around me, forming shifting shapes, taunting me with fleeting glimpses of movement that resolved into nothing. Then I heard it again. A whisper, right beside my ear. "Sarah?" I spun around, my breath catching in my throat. Nothing, just the swirling mist, the gray-green trunks of pines. But the scent was overpowering now, the cloying sweetness of decay, mingled with something else something sharp and metallic, like fresh blood. I wanted to scream, but the sound felt lodged in my throat. This was no prank. This was no animal. This was the Wendigo. Suddenly, a choked cry pierced the fog, followed by a sickening thud. "Mark!" I screamed, my voice raw. I ran blindly toward the sound, pushing through the swirling mist. The scent of decay grew stronger, thicker, coating my tongue. My lungs burned. Then I saw it, or him. A figure, impossibly tall and gaunt, stood among the trees, its silhouette distorted by the fog. Its limbs were long and spindly, like twisted branches, ending in clawed hands. Its head was small, almost skull-like, with 2 pinpricks of light, eyes that glowed with an ancient, insatiable hunger. It was stripped bare of flesh, just sinew and bone, and yet it moved with a terrifying agility. It stood over something on the ground. A body, a flash of red, a gleam of something white and unnatural. It was Ben. The creature's head snapped towards me. It hadn't seen me before, I was sure, but it smelled me. It knew I was there. A guttural sound like branches scraping against each other in a gale rumbled from its chest, and then it moved. Not walking, not running, but a horrifying, lurching scurry, impossibly fast, covering ground with terrifying speed. I didn't wait. I turned and ran, my lungs burning, the scream finally tearing from my throat. I just ran. I didn't know where. I just had to get away from that. The fog was my enemy, and my friend. It hid me, but it also disoriented me. The trees became a blur, a claustrophobic cage of dark trunks. I stumbled, fell, scraping my knees, but scrambled back up. The image of the creature, those hungry eyes, etched itself onto my mind. I heard shouts, other screams. The group was fragmenting. Chaos. My name was called again, but this time it was Mark's voice, distorted, echoing, coming from everywhere and nowhere at once.
Sarah, help me.
It cried, my heart wrenched. Was it him, or was it mimicking him, luring me? David's words rang in my ears. It can mimic voices, lure you deeper. I gritted my teeth, forcing myself to ignore it. I had to get out. I had to survive. A sharp, piercing shriek tore through the air, chilling me to the bone. It wasn't human. It was the sound of pure, unadulterated hunger. It was close, too close. I could feel its presence behind me, the cold, ancient malevolence of it. A rush of air, a skeletal whisper passed my ear. My hair stood on end. I didn't dare look back. I burst through a thicket, gasping for breath, and nearly collided with Emily. Her face was tear-streaked, eyes wide with terror. "Sarah! Oh God, Sarah!" she sobbed. They're everywhere." And before I could respond, a shadow detached itself from the fog behind her. Tall, gaunt. Its movement was a blur. Emily's eyes widened further, not looking at me, but behind me. A silent scream twisted her features. I didn't have time to process. A bone-rattling crunch, a gasp, and then silence. Just the swirling fog and the pounding of my own heart. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I just ran. Emily was gone. The forest itself seemed to be alive, pressing in on me, twisting its branches like grasping claws. The ground underfoot was soft, uneven, full of hidden roots and decaying leaves. I stumbled more often now, my legs heavy, my mind screaming for an end to the nightmare. Then, through a sudden break in the fog, I saw it, a glimmer of light, brighter than the diffused gray. A road. It had to be a road, the faint outline of power lines, almost invisible against the sky. Hope, a tiny, desperate flicker, ignited within me. I pushed forward, fueled by adrenaline, by the sheer, primal will to live. The sounds of the forest, the whispers, the shuffles, the screams, faded behind me, swallowed by the increasing distance and the rising wind. I burst out of the tree line onto a gravel road. It was narrow, overgrown, but undeniably a path back to civilization. I didn't know how far it was, or in which direction, but it was out. I ran down the road, not looking back, not daring to. I ran until my lungs felt like they would burst, until my legs gave out from under me, and I collapsed onto the gravel, sobbing, gasping for air. The silence here was different. It was still, yes, but it wasn't the pressing, suffocating silence of the forest. It was an empty silence, a vast, lonely quiet that spoke of absence, not presence. I lay there for what felt like an eternity, the cold gravel digging into my skin, the fog slowly lifting around me, revealing a gray, desolate sky. I was alone, utterly, terribly alone. Hours later, a distant hum. A car, a truck actually. It pulled up beside me, the driver, a grizzled old man in a flannel shirt, staring at me with a mixture of shock and pity.
Girl, what in God's name happened to you?
He asked, his voice rough but kind. I couldn't speak. I could only point back towards the impenetrable wall of trees, the woods, the dark, hungry woods. He helped me into his truck, his eyes lingering on the forest line, a knowing look passing over his face. He didn't press for details, didn't ask about my friends. He just drove. It's been months since that day. The doctors say I suffered from severe dehydration, exhaustion, and trauma. They try to explain away the things I saw, the things I heard, as hallucinations brought on by stress and fear. But I know what I saw. I know what I felt. I can still smell it sometimes, the sickly sweet scent of decay, even in my clean, safe apartment. I still hear the whispers, calling my name, just at the edge of hearing, just beyond the reach of comprehension. Sarah. And I still see the eyes, those ancient, hungry eyes, in the darkest corners of my mind. The forest. It's still out there, silent, waiting, and always, always hungry. And so ends tonight's tale, The Woods. Thank you for sitting with us in the dark. If the shadows spoke to you tonight, subscribe to Spookin' Softly and stay close. There are more stories waiting, more voices in the walls, more things that go quiet just before you notice them. Until next time, sleep well if you can.